Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fifth Child Podcast, the weekly podcast where I, your podcaster Chris, give you two different recommendations, either for video games, anime, movie, television series, or whatnot. And I want to say thank you so much for coming back in. I hope you guys had a great Halloween weekend. I made a bit of an oopsie. I thought that I had actually posted the Halloween episode right on Halloween. Turns out that I didn't end up doing that. So the podcast episode came out during Sunday afternoon. So hopefully, if you guys enjoyed that episode, I hope that you guys enjoyed that episode. I also hope that you guys had a pretty good Halloween as well. I did. Luckily, I had those days off from. Luckily, I had those 2 days off from school and work. So I was able to actually. Why did I say school? I'm not in school right now. So hopefully I was able to actually watch some movies and then also get to play the video game for today's podcast as well, which I'm going to talk about. So today I have a video game and a movie that I want to talk about, and we're going to kind of get back into the same kind of rhythm that it was before. There's not going to be any general theme for the next month or so. What I do have planned is that I do want to talk about the Star Wars series at some point, because I don't know if you noticed, there is going to be a new Star Wars movie coming out next month in December, and it is supposed to be the last of the new sequel trilogy that is produced by Disney. I have a lot of thoughts about the Star Wars trilogy, and obviously I have a lot of thoughts about the whole Star Wars series as a whole, and I'm interested to kind of delve into the general scope of the series and kind of where the series is at for me right now. It's in a very interesting place for me personally, and I kind of want to talk about and kind of air some things out, get my general ideas out in the series, just because there's a lot I want to talk about, and I do want to do this in preparation for the new movie, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a lot of opinions about that movie as well whenever it comes out. So I think it's a good general idea to get some airing out over the general series out in the open, and if anything on the podcast, so I can at least talk about it, and then hopefully maybe never talk about Star Wars again, because the series is going to be in an interesting place once this sequel trilogy is finished, and it's kind of up in the air as to what's going to happen with Star Wars, so it'd be nice to have maybe a little bit of a bookend for the series before its uncertain future comes into play. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more, please consider subscribing, and also like and comment if you have any ideas for future podcast episodes, if you have future ideas for any kind of content that you might like to see in this format, just let me know in the comments down below, and just keep on listening to the podcast. Again, I can't believe I said this last week. Every single podcast episode does come out on Friday, or at least should come out on Friday, barring any issues that might occur. I got kind of busy during Halloween. I just kind of forgot what to do with it. I kind of forgot about the episode. So hopefully I will not make that same mistake with future episodes, although there's no promises there, just because I'm super busy and sometimes I do forget. And this is just a side time thing I do. This isn't something that I just do on a regular basis, and obviously it's my full-time thing. This is just something I enjoy doing and like to do, and would like to do in a bigger capacity maybe at some point in the future. So like I said, I have a video game and a movie that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump right into the movie that I wanted to talk about first. So this entire year of 2019 has kind of been an interesting year for movies. There hasn't been a lot of movies that have come out this year that have super impressed me so far, although I do have a lot of ideas for movies that I do want to talk about, and there's a lot of movies that are coming out or that have limited releases right now that I do potentially want to talk about in the podcast in some way or format. I'm trying to get caught up on a lot of the movies that I've seen, and there's one movie that caught my eye that I managed to catch on Amazon Prime VOD. It's completely free to watch on Amazon Prime if you have it, and I think it's out for Blu-ray and DVD. It's kind of hard to find. You probably won't find it in Walmart. And that movie is Under the Silver Lake. So Under the Silver Lake is an independent film produced by A24. A24 is one of my personal favorite production companies working in film today, because they are well known for doing a lot of different movies that are extremely independent in their development and are not very well known. They don't make a lot of money, but they are a breeding ground for extremely good independent filmmakers that have gone on to do much bigger films. Namely, there's Ex Machina, namely one of my favorite films from 2015, Ex Machina, the Academy Award-winning movie Room, which featured Brie Larson and easily her best performance to date, and my favorite performance of her. And it's upsetting that she hasn't continued down that route of independent filmmaking, because that seems to be her wheelhouse. There's also Green Room, The Lobster, Moonlight, which was the Best Picture winner in 2016, and a lot of other good independent horror films as well, and namely one of my personal favorite films in 2015, The Witch, which is one of my personal favorite horror films of all time. And this film is definitely one of their latest forays into it, and also one of the ones that had the most interesting production cycle, because it is technically a 2018 film that was released in film festivals in 2018, and then was subsequently booed at and maligned at Cannes Film Festival before it was finally released in the United States, very briefly in limited release, and then just pushed onto VOD not very long after. So Under the Silver Lake has an interesting genre-bending aspect to it. There are a lot of genres that can be pegged to Under the Silver Lake. It can be considered a neo-noir, it can be considered noir, it can be considered a dark comedy, it can be considered a horror film, it can be considered a conspiracist thriller movie. There's a lot of genres that can be penned to this specific movie, so it's very hard to pin this movie into its own specific box as to, yes, this is what this film is. And that's kind of the main reasons why I like it. So there's not a lot I really want to talk about the plot, because there are some nice spoilers in this movie that I really do not want to talk about. There's a lot of different plot threads that lead to some pretty interesting, surprising twists to it that I personally loved. So I want to go ahead and just barely talk about the story a little bit, and I just want to talk about the aspects of the film that definitely make it worth watching. So the film is focused around our main character, portrayed by Andrew Garfield, named Sam, just a simple 30-something-year-old who lives in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, who's super interested in all the hidden meanings in popular culture and is an avid believer in a bunch of conspiracy theorists. He's also incredibly down on his luck. He does not work. He's overdue on his rents. And the general neighborhood also has an interesting vibe to it that continuously lends itself into Sam's paranoia. There's this dog killer that's going around town. An interesting plot thread that doesn't lead to a conventional climax whatsoever. And the beginning of the film, just note, the beginning of the film is focused around Sam meeting one of his next-door neighbors, Sarah, who he develops somewhat of a relationship with, before the next following day when Sarah and her family completely goes missing, and then Sam becomes more and more interested in the goings-on that happens in Silver Lake, and he seemingly falls into this odd underlining plots, with multiple hidden messages within a whole bunch of pop culture icons, within grunge bands, within movies, within video games. And that's the entire plot is basically just about Sam trying to figure out what exactly is happening, trying to find out if there is truly meaning to anything in his, not just in his own existence, but in the meanings of pop culture in itself. And this is all anchored really well by Andrew Garfield's performance. This is probably the best I have seen Andrew Garfield in a movie. Andrew Garfield is well known for not only his turn as Spider-Man in the two Amazing Spider-Man films, but he is also well known for Hacksaw Ridge, where he played an army doctor who did not want to kill anybody during World War II. I think it was World War II, and he also is well known for, oh gosh, I forgot the name of the main character. I forgot the name of his character who he played in The Social Network. But one of the friends of Mark Zuckerberg who got screwed over during the development of Facebook, who I think he did a fantastic job in that as well. And he turns a really good performance in this film as well. Sam, as a main character, is not someone who you generally like. He's very neurotic. He's very paranoid. Within the first 5 minutes of the film, he's seen using glasses from his apartment uptown, in his apartment in Silver Lake in LA, and he's 100% spying on one of the tenants of his neighboring apartments while they're out sunbathing, not exactly wearing any clothes. So he's not, just from that alone, he's not the most likable character. There's also interesting moments where it seems like he's got a penchant for violence as well, which is in itself extremely unexpected. And he has a general attitude throughout the film that doesn't really bode too well for his relationships with women. He's not very reliable. As I said, he's down on his luck and is overdue on a rent. He doesn't work. And he's incredibly neurotic, but we also stick with him the entire time because of Andrew Garfield's wonderful performance and also the interesting plot threads that go on throughout the film as well. There's not a lot of other characters in the movie that are played by well-known actors. The only other well-known actors in the film alone is, for example, Topher Grace, who was also, funnily enough, in Spider-Man 3, playing Eddie Brock or Venom. And he's kind of another character. He's a character also like Sam as well. Also interested in conspiracy theorists, but also doesn't really contribute much to society as well. Same thing, he has a very similar lifestyle to Sam as well, just playing around with old video games, namely Nintendo Entertainment games like Super Mario Brothers and the Legend of Zelda series, and doesn't really do much to contribute to society, so it's not very unlikely. So it's not completely far-fetched that him and Sam obviously have a relationship that developed. Another character, the other main character the film's mostly focused around as well is also Sarah, who's played by Riley Cofe, who was also the red-haired girl in Mad Max Fury Road, and she does a really good job too. She's not in the film enough after she disappears, but she's used sparingly for where she is. So that's generally the main plot of the movie in a nutshell from what I kind of want to talk about. What I mainly want to talk about is the directorial style, and I had failed to mention this earlier, but the movie is directed by David Robert Mitchell, who originally made his directorial debut in the 2014 or 2015 horror movie It Follows, which was the one horror movie about the supernatural, and it's the supernatural thing that follows you around after you have sexual intercourse with another person, and then the main goal of the entire movie is trying to run away from this thing, and then trying to pass on the supernatural curse to someone else. And the entire film had a great visual style to it that reminded me considerably of older 70s and 80s horror movies like the original Halloween, a little bit of Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, especially with the soundtrack. And David Robert Mitchell does a really good job at distinguishing his style much more clearly in Under the Silver Lake. Under the Silver Lake, like I said, is very genre-bending, and I think another good genre that I would add to it is David Lynchian. For those of you who are not aware, one of my other favorite filmmakers is David Lynch, who's well known for directing Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, and is well known for being one of the co-creators of one of my personal favorite television series, Twin Peaks, and the 2017 Revival series. David Lynch is very well known for incredibly cryptic symbolic messages in his filmmaking, as well as a little bit quirky dialogue that doesn't seem like it has any meaning and is almost quirky for the sake of quirky. and he has a very distinct style to all his films, and I almost feel like David Robert Mitchell was trying to emulate that style, and he does a very good job with this film. This is a very weird movie to watch. There are some things in this movie that, on the surface, make absolutely no sense and are definitely a stylistic choice. And Under the Silver Lake, I think, does a really, really good job with that. This is a great movie. If you like David Lynch, this is one of the best Lynchian movies that I can think of. There's not a lot of really, really gory sequences like you see in a David Lynch film. It does happen every so often, which I think also lends this movie into kind of its horror-ish, to the genre of horror a little bit as well. There is some interesting creepy imagery as well. This isn't a scary movie, but it does have those weird David Lynchian out of nowhere sequences that do kind of seem a little bit disturbing at the outset. And then it dives right back into its black comedy and back into the conspiracist theory aspect of the films as well. And I think it does a really good job at juggling that together, with juggling all that weird imagery and also juggling the conspiracy thriller aspect of it as well. As I said before, Andrew Garfield's fantastic in the film as well, and the cinematography is freaking phenomenal as well. The cinematography was done by Michael Giolakis, who hasn't really done a lot of films recently. He just started, I think one of his first cinematographic roles was in It Follows, which was a fantastically shot movie. Excuse me. And he does a fantastic job in Under the Silver Lake as well. And I think he's even he went on to be the DP for Us as well, which was another phenomenally filmed movie as well. There's a lot of nice wide shots and establishing shots that do a fantastic job of establishing the neighborhood of Silver Lake, LA. And I think that's another great aspect of the film as well, is that you get a great atmosphere about of suburban LA. A lot of movies that are set in LA are sometimes not filmed in LA. But when they actually get that night, when they are actually filmed in LA, and they do get a good solid, you get a great solid idea of kind of a little bit of the underbelly of LA. Another couple of my favorite films would be, for example, Collateral and Nightcrawler, which are filmed in LA, in some of the busier streets of LA, and you get a nice sense of sometimes both how kind of pristine LA was, while also showing you the nice little dirty aspect of it as well. And I think Under the Silver Lake does a great job of showing you kind of that suburban feeling as well, while juxtapositioning that with a bit of the dark, seedy underbelly. And I think that's kind of what the movie is going for, and I think this might be exactly why it was booed at Cannes film festivals. Most of the big movies that are critically lauded at Cannes are the ones that kind of celebrate filmmaking and celebrate the filmmakers. And Under the Silver Lake has a little underlining theme of being critical towards new Hollywood and old Hollywood. In the wake of 2017 and a lot of the Me Too scandals, and particularly of the Weinstein Company, I think Under the Silver Lake does have a little bit of symbolism revolving around that. There's a bit of objectification of female actresses that is very prevalent throughout this film, that also puts a magnifying glass up to the practices in Hollywood. And I think this is more or less why the film kind of got a little bit of an icy reception at Cannes Film Festival. I really do not want to go too much into the spoilers of this film, because I want you to kind of experience this yourself. But the more I kind of think about the movie and the more I definitely look at that, I do understand why this movie was not liked. It is from an objective standpoint, the film is a little cryptic of exactly what it's trying to go for, and I think it doesn't quite reach the heights that it was planning for. It does also feel its length a little bit, especially in the last half hour or so, where it kind of meanders a little bit. But altogether, I think the film holds up the film does hold itself up extremely well, and I think this is easily probably one of my favorite movies I've seen so far this year. I wouldn't say I exactly loved it. I think I need to rewatch it again. I think I need to rewatch it to see how much I really enjoyed it, but from everything from the interesting Lynchian perspective to filmmaking, from Andrew Garfield's amazing performance towards the cinematography, the direction, and the general symbolic nature of the story. This is easily probably one of my favorite films in 2019 so far. I would definitely watch it again. I honestly would probably go look for the Blu-ray to see how much it would be, and see if I want to support this even further, because I think it's important to support films like this, because it's very rare that we get an original movie like this. Because the film market is so oversaturated, like I said, with the big action movies that are all kind of a little bit generic and kind of the same, that kind of have the same vision throughout it. So whenever you get to see a film that gets to have its own singular vision, I think that's important to support. So I give Under the Silver Lake a big recommendation personally for me. I don't think this movie is going to be for everybody. I think it's just important to maybe watch the movie and see if it's for you. Go in with not really much expectations, and then you personally might like it, you might not like it. It's all up to your own taste, but I definitely recommend it. I think this movie was right up my alley, and I can't wait to see it again. So let's go ahead and switch gears right into the video game for today's episode. So as I stated much earlier in the podcast episode, I was playing one specific game after around Halloween day, and for most of that day and most of this weekend, I actually still even haven't finished it yet, but hopefully I can do that once I finish recording this episode, and that is Luigi's Mansion 3. So Luigi's Mansion 3 was the next game in the Luigi's Mansion franchise after Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the 3DS and the original for the Nintendo GameCube almost 18 years ago. So Luigi's Mansion 3 was produced by Nintendo, obviously, for the Nintendo Switch, and is actually developed by an American company called Next Level Games. Next Level Games was in charge of the Super Mario Strikers series, as well as the original Luigi's Mansion, not the original Luigi's Mansion, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the 3DS, and as obviously the new Luigi's Mansion for Nintendo Switch. So Luigi's Mansion 3, being the next game in the Luigi's Mansion franchise, is once again another kid-friendly spooky game for in the Luigi's Mansion franchise, where Luigi, where you get to play again as Luigi, the younger, skinnier, lankier, and scaredy-cat brother of Mario from the Super Mario Bros. Series. After him, Mario, Princess Toadstool, and a bunch of Toads go to this luxurious hotel that they soon figure out is haunted. And then all get kidnapped except for Luigi by the ghostly owner of the hotel, Helen Gravely, who has lured the group into a trap staged by King Boo, who has been the main villain of this franchise since Luigi's Mansion 1. After Luigi manages to escape King Boo's grasp, Luigi ends up finding his handy trusty poltergeist. Finds his super handy vacuum, the Poltergeist 3000, now in the new model, the G00. And then goes about the entire hotel trying to find as many ghosts as he can to suck up and bring back to Professor E. Gadd, the inventor of the Poltergeist, and trying to find, and throughout the entire hotel, trying to find Mario, Princess Toadstool, and the other Toads. So Luigi's Mansion 3 is a game I've been pretty excited for ever since E3 and some of the Nintendo Directs. I was a big fan of Luigi's Mansion 1 when it first came out for the GameCube. I think it's a wonderfully made game. It's still holds up graphically to this day. And Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the 3DS was a pretty good follow-up. I think it loses a bit of the atmosphere and some of the non-linearity that I think Luigi's Mansion 1 had. But I think Luigi's Mansion 3 is not only a step up from Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, but also it's also probably easily the best Luigi's Mansion in the entire series. I personally love this game. This might be my personal favorite Nintendo. This might not my personal favorite Nintendo Switch game so far this year. Fire Emblem Three Houses is probably the best game I played so far this year. But I think this game is a pretty good solid runner-up for one of the best Switch games of the year. So the gameplay of Luigi's Mansion 3 is you playing as Luigi as you travel throughout all 15 floors of the hotel, trying to find Mario, Princess Toadstool, and I think the 3 or 4 Toads that were kidnapped and trapped into portraits. And throughout the entire game, your main mode of defense and attack is a vacuum cleaner that lets you suck up ghosts. You also have a flashlight, which is used to stun the ghosts, so you can suck them up. And there's a whole lot of different other items as well, and there's a lot of different gameplay methods that you use. So the main focus of the game is that you have to travel throughout all the floors of the hotel, which are all incredibly varied. Every single floor of the hotel brings about a new challenge for Luigi to confront. Sometimes you'll either be in the you'll either be in the basement. You can either be in the boiler room. You can be in a different suite. You can be in a hotel suite. You can be in this twisty, turny magician's hallway. Hallway-based floor. Sometimes there's a pyramid. There's a pyramid inside the hotel, and there's just a whole slew of different levels in the There's a whole slew of different floors in the hotel that are all incredibly varied, which all look absolutely gorgeous too. This isn't the most graphically demanding game in the entire on the Switch. It's easily probably one of the best looking game. The art direction for this game is fantastic. The lighting engine throughout the game looks great as well. And there's also a pretty obvious physics engine that works within this game as well. A lot of the puzzles in this game, just from the very beginning of the game, once you get your poltergust, once you get your flashlight, once you also get your cooperative once you get your cooperative companion, which is a goo-based Luigi that you control back and forth between Luigi and Goo Luigi, most of the hotel that is accessible to is your oyster. There's a lot of puzzles that you have to solve. There's a lot of different gems and boos that you have to find throughout the game. And for the most part, all of the items that you have, all of your techniques and your equipment that you have are basically all that you need to find whatever you need in the hotel rooms that are accessible to you. For example, you have your vacuum, which you can use to suck up the ghosts, but also use to suck up environmental objects around you. You can then also expel it and shoot it as a projectile. You have your flashlight, which is used to stun the ghost, and then you can also activate light-sensitive buttons in the rooms as well. You also get a suction cup, which you can shoot at something that has either a target on it or that it can stick to something. And then you can also suck that suction cup. And then there's also a new feature in the game which allows you to slam different objects, or you can slam different ghosts against something that also increases the damage output while you're sucking something in. It also provides a little bit of a destructible environment aspect to the game where you can find previously undiscovered items that you could not reach before if you were able to slam the object that thing was in. There's also a dark light feature, which is another form of the flashlight that allows you to look at hidden objects that might potentially be possessed, and then you can use that dark light to reveal itself, and that can be a new way to solve a puzzle as well. And as I said before, you also get a cooperative companion, which is a goo-based clone for Luigi as well. This also has a co-op feature as well, where you can have a player 1 as Luigi and player 2 as the Goo Luigi, which I played a little bit of it, and it's kind of neat. It's got the same problem that Mario Odyssey had, where you had to use a Joy-Con for both Mario and, I forgot the name of the hat's name. But you're only limited to a Joy-Con per player, which is a little bit difficult playing a game with just a Joy-Con, but it still works. And there's just there's so much variety to the ways that you can solve different puzzles throughout Luigi's Mansion 3 that it's so undeniably It's so undeniably fun. Now, the game isn't without issues, I think. Some of the levels do go on for a little bit longer than I wish they could. For example, there is a water level that I wasn't particularly fond of. There's also a sand-based level, which took me a while to figure out what I needed to do, because there's one aspect, because there was one interactable environment that I didn't know I could use another form. I could use... there was one technique that I didn't know I could use to interact with the environment, and it took me a really long time to finish this one specific room in the sand level. Another issue with the game, I think, is the controls. There are different ways you can customize the controls. There are different ways you can customize the control scheme in Luigi's Mansion 3, but one of my main problems is that you have your A, B, X, Y buttons. And your A button can be used to use your flashlight. Your X button can be used for the dark light, and then you can also use the Y button for your suction cup. But the problem with that is that if you're trying to use this one of the control sticks to aim, it's kind of difficult for you to twist your right hand around that little Joy-Con in order to have both your flashlight on and while turning at the same time. Luckily, you can also use the shoulder buttons, the R and L and the ZR and ZL buttons, that can also be used for the flashlight, the vacuum, and the dark light, and the suction cup. So that actually, once you figure out that you can use the shoulder buttons, the game does get a lot easier. There are some motion controls, but you can only use the motion controls on a horizontal, you can only use the motion controls on a vertical, axis, so that doesn't really help out too much. I end up turning the motion controls off. Besides that, I think there's a lot to love in Luigi's Mansion 3. I am not finished with the game quite yet. I think I'm almost done. I'm probably about 3/4 of the way through the game. It's not very terribly long. I think there is a good chunk of replay value in the game, though. As I said, there are different environments to explore that also have these hidden items in it as well. That adds a little bit of a completion status to it as well. So even if you finish the game and you haven't gotten everything yet, there's still a lot of good reason to go back and play the game, and it's just fun exploring a lot of these environments. The game also has a great charm to it as well, particularly Luigi's facial animations. I think this potentially has better character models than Super Mario Odyssey, which I thought was one of the better looking games on the Switch, on the Nintendo Switch, even on its own. So I think that's all I got to say about Luigi's Mansion 3 then. I personally love the game. I can't wait to finish it, and then I can't wait to dive a little bit deeper in the game and try to get all the collectibles, because I do think there's a lot of replay value to the game, and quite honestly, if I could easily see myself maybe replaying through the entire game all over again, because it just is a lot of fun. So I give Luigi's Mansion 3 a big recommendation. Again, the game just came out, so don't expect it to go down in price anytime soon. I think you can maybe pick up the game at Walmart for $50 though, which isn't bad. So that's a big recommendation for Luigi's Mansion 3 for me, and I think that's it for the podcast episode. So I want to thank you so much, guys, for listening in. If you want to listen in, if you like what you have listened here and you want to see more, just make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Remember, the episodes always, for the most part, will come out. They should come out every Friday around 12 o'clock or so. I got in a bad habit of not getting it out this Friday, so I'll make sure not to do that again. I unfortunately make not so many promises because, like I said, I do get super busy and sometimes I forget. But at the very least, every podcast episode does come out later in the week after Friday, around Friday or a little bit after Friday. So thank you so much, guys, for listening in, and I cannot wait to see you guys in the next